Hi and welcome back. I hope you're all doing well and keeping safe. Today I have yet another sleeper weapon for you to use within Call of Duty Warzone, that one being the Holger 26. Now I know I only recently uploaded a video with 7 underrated weapons, but in my eternal quest to find off-meta weapons to use, I came across this one and I thought, you know what, this could work as well. Let's have a closer look and see if it can work. So what initially made me think about this weapon was about 2 months ago. It saw quite a big patch, which included a reduction to its ADS speed from 450 milliseconds down to 400 milliseconds, which is very impactful, making it have the fastest base ADS speed out of all of the LMGs, and sort of bring it a bit more in line with some of the assault rifles. It also had a big buff, and I mean a big buff, to its movement speed, pushed by a massive 0.5%. I'm not sure why they did this, like why they couldn't have just given it a decent number, like a couple percent, but 0.5% was where they went. Now, although this doesn't seem massively impactful, when you actually compare it to all the fully built weapons within Warzone, it actually brings this weapon above the average. Even for some of the assault rifles, it still moves faster than some of those with all their big barrels and their magazines and everything on them. This weapon actually has faster movement speed than some of those. Next up, and probably arguably the most important buff for this weapon, was to its the change to its recoil pattern, which was a massive change, changing it from almost pretty much a straight diagonally right pattern to a vertical pattern that tapers off to the right, giving it very similar to the pattern to the M4, although slightly more reduced, so it doesn't have as much magnitude as the M4. And we all know how much of the laser beam the M4 can be, so that bodes pretty well for the Holger 26 to become pretty much a laser beam rifle. It also saw a buff to some of its attachments, including no stock and stipple grip tape. They both got a massive reduction to their ADS speed. However, in the most recent patch, we saw a big reduction to the no stock's recoil pattern, so I'll be avoiding that one, though the stipple grip tape is definitely one that I'm going to be using. So for the attachments that I'm currently using on the Holger 26, although in the gameplay slightly different to what I'm actually using now, this was a sort of fine-tuning moment. I'm starting out with the ever-popular monolithic suppressor. This increases its damage range, its bullet velocity, and keeps you off the radar, so there's no reason not to be using this one. The Tack Laser, which has pretty much become a staple attachment for me for all of my weapons within Warzone, because it gives you that percentage reduction to ADS speed. So if you've got a really slow ADS weapon, put it in the Tack Laser on, reduces that more than sticking anything like the stipple grip tape or the fast ADS stock or any of those attachments. So that is really one of the most impactful attachments that you can use, especially for a single attachment to bring it up, bring that ADS speed up, although I'm not only using that one. Next up, I'm also using the Viper Reflex at the moment. This is only because I'm trying to unlock all the different sights, because I kind of want that little blue dot for my reflex sights, but this is entirely up to you what you want to use. The VLK works really well on this one, and for the most part, there's going to be a weapon that you're going to be using at slightly longer ranges, so the VLK is probably your best choice here. It's also going to reduce that horizontal recoil a bit. I'm not quite sure why it does that, but it helps with that as well, and it will make it very comparative to what you'll see most of the loadouts for the Grau and the Kilo and like the Bruin. So most of those weapons are using the VLK at the moment, so highly recommend using that. Or the holographic, which actually gives you a 1.5 times zoom, so if you want somewhere between the VLK and just a base weapon, that holographic sight's actually a pretty good one to use. Then I'm using the stipple grip tape, which reduces its sprint out times and actually brings them pretty much in line with the assault rifles. Also, as I said, it got that big buff to its ADS speed reduction as well, so that's also a positive to use that one. And then finally, I'm using the Commando foregrip to reduce that horizontal recoil even more, making it pretty much a straight vertical recoil. So with me on my mouse, it's pretty much a straight pull down. I don't have to think about anything more. It's a very easy recoil to compensate for that one, especially for those first like 10-15 shots. You should for the most part be bursting your weapon, so for 10-15 shots you're getting pretty much straight vertical recoil, which is incredibly easy to deal with. Now you can swap out the Commando foregrip for the Merc foregrip, as it's got that hidden movement speed buff at the moment, which actually makes its overall movement speed of about 96.5%, which pushes it up to similar what the Grau's base movement speed is before you stick on its big barrel and its magazine, which actually gives it sort of one of the fastest moving long range weapons. So moving around the map, actually not too difficult with this weapon. Now I'd probably use this as much as you can in the short term, because I can't see them not reverting this unlisted buff relatively soon, because I don't think that was meant to be intentional. So use it as much as you can whilst it's still there. It also, again, is personal preference to whether you want to reduce that vertical recoil a bit more and you're quite happy with that little bit more side-to-side bounce. And it's not a massive amount of side-to-side bounce by any means, so you can deal with it quite easily with the Merc foregrip, and it just makes it very easy to control without having to mount the weapon at really long ranges, as you can see in some of the clips in the background. Now this image shows the data of a comparable Holger 26 build to a Kilo 141. Now I've taken this data from COD Gun Data, and I'll leave a link in the description below. It's quite a useful website to go and build up your weapons and see what are the positive and negatives of all the weapons. For both of these builds, I've put the VLK optic and the Commando foregrip on them to keep them very comparable, and these are the most likely the ways you're going to build these weapons. Now from this you can see that the Holger actually has a faster ADS speed, a better sprint out time, and a faster movement speed than the Kilo with exactly the same build. However, the Kilo does have a slightly better strafe ADS speed, and probably the most impactful change is the higher bullet velocity, making it a bit more of a hit scan weapon. So at long ranges you don't really have to lead your targets, but the Holger's by no means bad in this area. You just have to lead your targets a little bit more than you will recoil on the Kilo, because it's probably got a bit too high a velocity on the Kilo, and the Holger could probably do with a little bit of buff, because it doesn't actually have any big barrels to buff its bullet velocity up, whereas the Kilo does. So far, the Holger is looking not half bad at all. It's very comparable to assault rifles within Warzone with its movement speeds, but I haven't spoken of one area which kind of elevates this weapon a little bit further. Now, I've taken this data from watching exclusive Aces and Drifters videos. Most 5.56 rifles have the same damage model, starting out at 28 damage, dropping to 23, and then dropping to a further 18 damage at longer ranges. Whereas the Holger only has that one drop-off point, dropping from 28 down to 23 damage, meaning that over long ranges, this weapon is going to be dealing more damage, especially within those Warzone ranges of like 90-odd meters. You're going to be able to drop targets faster than you would be able to with the Kilo or the Grau. Now, I mentioned both the Kilo and the Grau because this gun has pretty much the same comparable rate of fire. It sits somewhere in between the two of them. So you're going to have a very similar DPS and time to kill with those weapons. So not having that extra damage drop off means that it's going to keep its time to kill over a longer distance over those two weapons. And being the fact that it has a very similarly low recoil as both these weapons, it's going to be a pretty good weapon to be able to beam targets from across the map. Now, I'm by no means saying this is going to replace any of the meta weapons. I'm just thinking it's a pretty solid alternative, especially considering it has a base 100 round magazine with a pretty respectable reload speed. The only other assault rifle, or the only assault rifle that can compete with this, is the Kilo, but as soon as you put that 100 round mag on the Kilo, you reduce its ADS speed massively, and you reduce its movement speed so much and brings it down to sort of 80% movement speed, whereas this, you're sitting about 93% movement speed. You move so much faster. Your ability, your handling to jump around in gunfights is actually better with an LMG than it would be on an assault rifle, which is kind of a bit bizarre, but that's the way it goes. Now, I will admit, if you're looking for the best LMG to use at the moment within the game, that title definitely is held by the Mark 9 Bruin. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a nerf coming to that weapon relatively soon. It's pretty much one of the most used weapons within Warzone at the moment, and it's a complete laser beam with a very high damage model. Now, although the Holger's never going to compete with that weapon's time to kill, I still think it's a very solid choice because it's low recoil, and with a large magazine, it's going to be something that you're able to lay down an awful lot of bullets and wipe entire squads without needing to reload. Now, with all that said and done, I'd highly recommend giving this weapon a chance. Chuck it on and see what works well for you. It's got a solid rate of fire, good handling stats, a 100 round magazine, a good damage model, and a low recoil. And you might find yourself with a new favourite weapon within Warzone. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learned something new. So until next time, goodbye for now. Bye.